Hi, everybody. I'm Jay Privman, joined by my Derby Watch tag team partner, Mike Watchmaker. We are respectively the national correspondent and the national handicapper with daily racing form. And we're going to take a look at the races this weekend that should impact our Derby Watch top 20. And Mike, let's start with the Bluegrass Stakes, which really looks like it has the deepest field in terms of quality. Only 7 runners, but 4 in this race are current members of our Derby Watch Top 20. Let's start with the horse who I think we all really want to see how he performs in this race, and that's McCracken, unbeaten, but he missed an intended start last month. Let's go back and take a look at his Sam Davis and tell me what you're expecting from him when he runs in the Bluegrass on Saturday.
Jay, I think the key word here is prep. Well, it'd be nice if he won this race and kept his perfect record intact. I mean, his real goal is to win the Kentucky Derby, and I would think that this race is going to be a significant building block towards that goal, considering the fact that he did miss an intended start in the Tampa Bay Derby. The thing of it is that all 4 of the horses that we have on Derby Watch in this race are closers to some extent, including McCracken, who's very much a deep closer, and there's very little early speed in this Bluegrass. I mean, it's not a big field, but there's very little pace, and I think the pace is going to be very, very deliberate, and it's going to be interesting to see how our 4 Derby Watch horses being closers react to that.
Well, Tapwrit was the beneficiary of McCracken's absence from the Tampa Bay Derby. He won it after running second in the Sam Davis in his prior start. And Mike, I think this horse is continuing to improve, and I want to see how he does on Saturday, because if he continues to move forward, I think he's a major player come May the 6th. What do you think of him?
I'm more skeptical of Tapwrit than you are, Jay, and that's because I thought McCracken beat him completely decisively in the Sam Davis. And now McCracken's missed a start since then. Tapwrit has won since then. And maybe Tapwrit has taken a step forward, and maybe McCracken isn't going to be 100% in the Bluegrass. So that might allow Tapwrit to even the score with McCracken in the Bluegrass on Saturday. But, people are going gaga over Tapwrit's victory in the Tampa Bay Derby, and he beat State of Honor in that race. And I feel like I'm a lone voice in the wilderness. State of Honor has had 6 career starts around 2 turns. He's lost ground in all 6 of those races in the final furlong. He's not a true distance horse. I don't think any of the other horses in the Tampa Bay Derby were true distance horses either. And I think that in some regard helped Tapwrit look better than he might really be.
J-Boy's Echo is also in this field. He comes off a win in the Gotham Stakes. Was certainly his best performance so far, but Mike, I'm like, as you're skeptical about Tapwrit, I'm skeptical about J-Boy's Echo. I'm really not sure just how good he is, and this to me is a major class test for him. What do you think of J-Boy's Echo?
Oh, I have a long history with J-Boy's Echo. I picked him when he lost in the Delta Downs jackpot. I picked him when he lost in the Withers, which I thought was an extremely meek effort on his part. And then I did not pick him in the Gotham, and he came back with an explosive victory. It was a legitimately fast race. I mean, he got a triple-digit buyer figure for that race, and it was a legitimately fast race. He also got a tremendous setup. I think the pace was quite strong in the Gotham, and he set off, and he really kind of fell back in the middle stages of the run down the backstretch. It was a good setup for him, and he's not going to get that kind of setup in this Bluegrass. And he's one of the horses I'm really interested to see how he responds to what, if he can run as well without the ideal setup he got last time.
And then the 4th and final horse in the Bluegrass is Practical Joke. And this is a horse who I'm just skeptical as to how much punch he's going to have going 2 turns. He ran a decent enough race in his 3-year-old debut at Gulfstream Park. But Mike, I think his best races are these 1-turn miles like what we saw in the Champagne. And he's got to prove it to me that he really wants to go out to a 1.125 and beyond. What do you think of Practical Joke?
I'm with you there totally, Jay. I mean, he made a nice move when he was third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but didn't sustain the run. He managed to get second in the Fountain of Youth in his first start this year from 3 rules. who carved out what I thought was a pretty fast pace in the Fountain of Youth. And who's a horse that I think at this level we're talking isn't a two-turn horse. I think he's a much better sprinter. So I think Practical Joke is a horse who looks better on paper than he might actually be, at least in terms of distance racing.
Let's now move on to the race this weekend that drew the biggest field of all. That's the Santa Anita Derby. 13 were entered. just a few minutes ago as we tape this on Wednesday. Iliad is the lukewarm favorite. He comes off a second-place finish in the San Felipe behind Mastery. I thought he ran a decent enough race, Mike. I thought he could have been a closer second had he been ridden for second, but obviously they tried to win the race, and he emptied out a little bit towards the last 16th to 8th of a mile of the race. And to me, all this race does is make me wish Mastery was still around. But I do think Iliad's going to run a good race in this spot, but he has to prove it again. Like we were talking about Practical Joke a moment ago, he's really unproven still around 2 turns. What do you think of Iliad?
That's the thing, Jay. He's totally unproven around 2 turns. His race in the San Felipe was his first attempt going 2 turns, and while you say that maybe he could have been a closer second to Mastery, Mastery was taken well in hand in the late stages of that race too. So, I went back and watched the replay of the San Felipe again today, and there's no guarantee that Iliad's going to like going 2 turns. I mean, maybe he's bred to like it. Maybe, the fact that he could be close yet still be effective sitting a little bit off the pace might help him. But I'm going to take, you got to show me you like 2 turns approach with Iliad in the Santa Anita Derby.
The other horse in the Santa Anita Derby who's currently on our Derby Watch Top 20 is Gormley. And Mike, I don't know what to make of this horse anymore. I thought his race in the Sham was terrific. And then he came back, and I thought he was disappointing in the San Felipe. And I'm at a loss as to know what he's going to do on Saturday. Because when he's good, he's good. And when he's not, he could finish 7th out of 13 in this race. What do you think of him? Do you have a better feel for him than I do?
He's just maddeningly inconsistent. I mean, and you cannot be encouraged with the way he dropped anchor early on the far turn in the San Felipe. I mean, that was he's a better horse than that. But I mean, does he feel like showing up? The problem is that it's really the Sham is the race that makes me feel that if you're a Gormley fan to begin with, maybe you should stick with him one more start, because when he won the front runner last fall, he got away with an easy, uncontested early lead. That was not the case in the Sham. The Sham was a legitimately a strong victory on his part, although a narrow one. Problem is, the horse at the edge in that race came back with a bad performance in his next start too. So, maybe it wasn't as good a race as I think it was.
And that horse that Mike's referring to is American Anthem, who's going to try and redeem himself in that big Santa Anita Derby field. Let's move on now to the last of the 3 races being run Saturday. That's the Wood Memorial at Aqueduct. 3 horses in this race that are on our Derby Watch Top 20. And Mike, the one with the biggest questions to answer is Battalion Runner. He's a horse that we've carried on our list without him having any points. He's finally making his stakes debut. This will be his one shot to get points. I thought his allowance win was solid but not spectacular. And to me, he needs to raise his game to not only win this race, but go on to the Derby. What are your thoughts on Battalion Runner?
I thought the same thing that you did, Jay, about his allowance win last time out at Gulfstream. I thought it was a race that everyone expected, a blowout winner, and instead he had to work hard to get the job done. That said, his profile is eerily reminiscent of Always Dreaming, who, came into last week's Florida Derby with decent but not wowing overnight form, and then made his stakes debut and just obliterated that Florida Derby field. I mean, maybe Battalion Runner's a lot better than he's shown the world that he is so far. I wouldn't put it past him.
And one thing we have learned over the years is that horses can get very good in the springtime of their 3-year-old years. Another horse in this race that we're going to keep an eye on is Cloud Computing, second last time out in the Gotham behind J-Boy's Echo. I thought he ran a very good race, Mike, considering it was only his second start, first time around 2 turns, stakes debut. To me, he's going to be very prominent in this race, but lightly raced, and that can be something that could come back to bite him later on. What do you think of Cloud Computing?
He ran big in the Gotham for all the reasons you mentioned, and also because he was much closer to that pace that collapsed in the Gotham than J-Boy's Echo was. And he never quit. I mean, he chased J-Boy's Echo all the way down to the last jump in that race. And I thought he ran giant for a horse making only his second career start. And, I think the rest of this field could be in trouble if he runs back to that effort. I mean, it was a big one as far as I'm concerned.
And then finally, we've got Irish War Cry, who he's kind of like the Gormley of the East Coast. Very, very good in his first start at Gulfstream, not so much in his second start at Gulfstream. Now he goes up to the Wood Memorial. He's been training at Fair Hill for Graham Motion. What are you expecting out of Irish War Cry? Because for me, he's like Gormley. I don't know what to expect. What do you think?
Well, the thing with Gormley is Gormley ran a couple of real clunkers interspersed in between his good races. Irish War Cry only has that one bad race, but boy, it was a bad race. It was a dismal performance in the Fountain of Youth where he gave it up very, very early. It was the complete opposite of what he did in the Holy Bull. The Holy Bull was a strong victory in his part, although he controlled a very moderate pace that day. And so he's going to have to answer the question whether or not he can be as effective when he sees more pace pressure. I'm not sure, we haven't seen the PPs to the Gotham yet, to the Wood Memorial yet. I'm not sure if there's other early speed types in the race yet that could really guarantee that. But I also think that Cloud Computing and Battalion Runner are horses that want to be close anyway. So, we're going to find out about Irish War Cry in the Wood. He ran too well in the Fountain of Youth to give up on him just yet because he does have only that one bad race.
His Holy Bull was very good. The Fountain of Youth, not so much. We'll see if he can rebound. Lots of interesting developments sure to come this weekend with 3 races on the road to the Kentucky Derby. And after this, there's only one more race that offers 170 points overall, 100 to the winner, that being the Arkansas Derby a week from Saturday. We'll preview that next week, and we'll recap these 3 races that we just talked about as well next week. For now, though, hope you enjoyed our preview of this weekend's races. There's also a video recap of last weekend's 2 stakes, the Florida Derby and the Louisiana Derby, here at drf.com. For Mike Watchmaker, I'm Jay Privman. Thanks for watching.